Hello. Is it D Mahenty? Hello. Thank you for joining the live. Hey, Dwayne. How are you doing? Hope you all are having a good Sunday. Hello, the word of Elijah. Who are you? Good. I'm doing good, Dwayne. Doing good. Blessed to see another day. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. My name, Daughter of Jesus. That's my name. D Mahanti, that's my name. What's the topic, the word of Elijah? It's called Somebody's Watching You. Hi, Preston. Thank you for joining the live. Hi, Muhammad. Hi, Nathan. Camlish. I can't see all these names. Sorry. Hello, Brian from Kenya. Hello, Nathan. I'm doing good, Muhammad. How are you doing? Thank you all. Thank you all so much for joining the live. Hello, Durham Nayak. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Hi, Kartik. Hi, Amit. Where am I from? I'm from Colorado. Hello, Lena. I hope all is well with you. Hi, Nathan. I'm doing good. How are you doing? Hi, Mari. 23. Hi, how are you doing? Is it Vikash? Vikash? Thank you for joining from India. What's my age? I'm 51. Hello. Thank you all for joining. What is my profession? I work in the medical field. Hello, hello. Thank you all. Yeah, I'm 51. I know. I have 4 grown children. My oldest is 30. Yeah. And I have 3 grandchildren. I'm thankful that I don't look like what I've been through. 'Cause I've been through a lot. I would love to come to India. Okay. Thank you for stopping by, Nathan. Thank you. Hello, Papoose. Hello. Yeah, I've been through a lot. My husband passed away, and I've just been through a lot, but I'm still here. Yeah, I'm down to earth, but I love Jesus too. So, but I'm gonna go ahead and thank you all so much for joining. I appreciate you all, and I just pray God's blessings over your lives. So I wanted to talk about somebody's watching you. You know, of course, I want to start out with the word first of all. I'm reading out of Galatians, the 2nd chapter, and it's verse 20, and it reads, "I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me." And I'll keep reading verse 21. "I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing." So this was just in my spirit, y'all, to share. I pray it blesses somebody. So, and I'm reading my notes, so that's why I'm looking away. But we go through life each day, doing our daily things, and we go on our jobs every day. We go home every day. We tend to our families. We go to church on Sunday. You know, wherever we go, in the stores, in the gas stations, wherever we go, somebody's watching us, you know. And, you know, whether you're having a good day, bad day, whatever, somebody is watching you. And there are people on your job, they watching how you talk, they watching how you walk, they watching everything about you. And they're not even your supervisors, you know, they're not even your managers, they're not your director or whatever you know, whatever title they got. These are people that have their eye on you. They not stalking you, but they watching to see. You know, if you say that you love God, you say you love Jesus, you profess to be a certain way. They watching to see how you treat others. They're watching to see how you talk to other people. And you know, it's so important, y'all, to be we say we love Jesus, we say we want to do what's right. People are watching us. And you know, it's hard to witness to somebody if you're not walking the walk. You know, you talk the talk, but you're not, when it comes to walking the walk, you know, we all fall short. Yes, we do. But what I'm saying is intentionally doing things wrong just because you're having a bad day. And I've heard people say, you know, I'm having a bad day. Everybody gonna have a bad day today. You know, I've heard people say that. But that's not godly. That's not godly at all, because see, you bringing your mess and putting it on everybody else, and that's not fair to everybody else, because it's people that, you know, they one step away of contemplating taking their life, or you know, they right at the end. They right at the end of that cliff. And see, you being mean and evil and wanting to push your bad day on them, that could just tip them right over. And you know, I pray that nobody's doing that or has done that. But what I'm saying, I know it can happen. It can happen. And that's why it's so important for us to treat people right. You know, when you do right, right will follow you. Do what's right, you know. And again, you know, people that you around and stuff, I love people. I love everybody. It's nobody on this earth that I don't love. Nobody. I love everybody. They can slap me, they can kick me, push me, whatever. I'm gonna pray for them. I'm just gonna pray for them. That's just the type of heart I have. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna probably get upset, but you know what? At the end of the day, I'm like, it's something going on with that person. So I'm just gonna pray for them. My heart goes out to them, but I'm not gonna return what they did to me back to them. I'm never gonna do that. Now, back in the day, yes, I would have done it in a heartbeat. But since God has changed me and transformed my mind and my heart, that's not my intention anymore. You know, I want to love them. I want to pray for them. I want to add them to my prayer list. That's what I want to do. But people can tell if you real or not. They can tell, you know, you fake, if you just putting on. People can see that a mile away. And I don't know why people feel like that they can pretend and put on for people, but people can see that. You know, people that's paying attention can see, you know, exactly how you are. And most of all, Jesus sees everything. He see everything. He know your thoughts. He know everything. So, you know, don't ever think you're getting away with anything. You know, you can act a certain way, but in your mind, you thinking something else. God already knows it. He knows it all. He knows it all. So we lose our opportunity to witness to people when they watching us from afar. You know, you going around talking about you love God and you go to church every Sunday, or you pray all the time, and they see you on your job doing stuff against somebody. They hear you in the break room gossiping about somebody. You know, I can't stand her. I don't like him. You know, he get on my nerves. You know, I hate this job. You know, you saying all this stuff, but yet you say you're a child of God. But yet you say you love a God. You know, God is not, he's not the author of confusion. You know, and any of that stuff that you're doing that's ungodly, he don't approve of it. He don't approve of any of it. And you know, again, if we cussing people out, if we're always at the verge about to fight somebody, you know, quick to get mad about something, none of that represents Jesus. None of it. You can say, well, God know my heart. Yeah, he do know your heart. He see your heart too. He see your heart too. So at the end of the day, we got to ask God for forgiveness. We got to repent of those sins and ask him each day to make us new, to make us better. You know, we can't get up and keep doing that. What's that they say? It says, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. That's crazy. You gotta, let's want to change. Let's want to be better each day that God allows us to wake up. We should want to be better. That's my prayer. That's always my prayer. Lord, make me better today than I was on yesterday. I want to be better. I don't want to be the same. I don't want to do what I did on yesterday. I want to be better today. And that's my constant prayer. But if we are not representing Jesus, if we are ever in doubt about anything that we are doing, we need to stop and ask ourselves, what would Jesus do? There used to be some bracelets. I don't remember what year it was, but it was a t-shirts and everything. It was WWJD. And it stood for what would Jesus do? So if you ever in doubt about something that you're doing, if you got a question about if this is good or not, or, even though it probably is wrong, but if you still got a question about it, you say, what would Jesus do this? Because he ain't gonna never do nothing wrong. He ain't gonna never hurt nobody. He ain't gonna never cheat nobody. He ain't gonna never lie to nobody. He ain't gonna never try to fight nobody. So the answer gonna be no. I shouldn't do that because Jesus wouldn't do it. Well, if I say I'm following Jesus and I say I want to be more like Jesus, he will never do anything like that. That's what we have to keep reminding ourselves, because sometimes we tend to get off track, me included. But that's one thing that I've never done. I never wake up intentionally. Who can I make mad today? Who can I hurt their feelings today? I've never did that. I've had it done to me. I've had it done to me a lot of times. But I keep on pushing. I keep on going. I keep on, pushing my way through. Because like I said, I don't get mad at people just like that anymore. I feel sorry for them. I pray for them. And when I say I feel sorry for them, I add them to my prayer list. I say, you know what? They're not feeling good today. And it's okay. But it's a lot of days I don't feel good, but I still treat people right. I still do my best to make sure somebody else feel better than I feel. That's what I'm getting to. I want to make sure you better than me. If my head hurting, I don't want you to feel bad. Let me see, can I, help you in your day? Can I encourage you or do something to help you? That's where God wants us to be. He wants us to, not always want somebody to do something for us, but we should be looking out for somebody else. If we say we love Jesus, that's what he do. That's what he's about. He's about love. He loves everybody. He don't love just blacks. He don't love just whites, Hispanics. He loves everybody. Everybody. And this is a word for somebody right here. If you planning to go to heaven, heaven won't be section off. It's going to be everybody. It's going to be all races. Everybody is going to be worshiping Jesus together. So we got to practice down here. We got to rehearse down here. That's how it's going to be. This is just a rehearsal on earth. But if you planning to go to heaven, he wants you to love you're going to be loving everybody. Ain't going to be no sections. Ain't going to be no certain areas. We all going to be together. And that's how it should be down here. And I was talking to a lady today at church. And me and her was talking about that. And she said she was raised sort of like that. Certain races you don't really, mingle with. And I said, I've never believed in that. I said, I love everybody. I love everybody. And God knows my heart. He knows your heart too. Everybody. Everybody. We should be loving on everybody. But that's for somebody. But I wanted to share this. It's been some years ago, but I wanted to share this because how somebody's always watching you. And in this case, it was my youngest son. So like I said, it's been years ago. They were little and everything. They grown now, but we had stopped at Little Caesar's Pizza, and it was after church. I think it was on a Wednesday night, and we had just got out of, Bible study. And usually on Wednesday, we stop there to get, because it's sort of late. It's after 8 o'clock, so 7 o'clock. So it's trying to get them a pizza so they can get ready for school the next day. And so we stopped at the pizza, the drive-through. And the lady, they would always be real super busy on Wednesday night. But the lady somehow thought I had paid for the pizzas. And I think we had ended up getting 2 pepperoni pizzas. And she said, She said, okay. She gave me the pizzas, she put the pizzas in the car. And she said, have a good night, ma'am. And I said, what is she doing? And she closed the window. Well, she thought that I had paid for the pizzas, but I had not paid for the pizzas. And so I said, ma'am. And so she opened the window back up. She said, what? And I said, I didn't pay for the pizzas. And she said, oh, I thought you had paid. But see, they were so busy, y'all, that, it was just so much going on. But so I paid her. But as we were pulling off, my youngest son said, Mama, say you could have got away with not paying for those pizzas. I said, yeah, I could have. I said, but two things would have happened. I said, her drawer would have been short that night, and that would have been bad for her. And I said, the number two, I said, God would have dealt with me for being doing something that did not represent him. Just came from church, just came from Bible study, and I'm trying to get out of paying $10, because I think at the time they were $5 then. And I said, or $11 or whatever it was. I said, what I'm trying to cheat somebody at $11 for? So, but that was a teachable moment for him, because he was young, he didn't understand. But he said, I seen him, he was looking like, but I wasn't trying to impress him. I was not trying to impress him. I wanted to please God. And I'm so happy that my children were, the younger three were in the car with me. And I was so glad that they were able to witness that, because yeah, I could have gotten away with that. But God, in that situation, not only was my youngest son watching me, but God was watching me too. Just like he watched you. He watched us do everything. He watched everything we do. Like I said, I don't understand why people think they're getting away with nothing. He see everything. You can go in your darkest room. He see exactly what you're doing. And that lady, she still looked a little baffled. Like, I guess she thought I'm like, I promise you I didn't pay for this. I'm not going to pay for it twice. But she looked at me like, oh, and I've had it happen to me, at another time. And the person said, well, thank you for your honesty. And I'm like, you don't have to thank me for it, because it's just the right thing to do. I wouldn't want anybody to do me like that. That lady at the end of that night, her drawer would have been short, and she would have probably got in trouble, may have gotten fired. I don't know, because of $11. So y'all, that's what I'm saying. Let's just be mindful. It ain't about what you can get out of a situation, but it's about what you can doing with the right thing in that situation. That's what everything is about. And then there was another time where I worked for this company. I worked for quite a few jobs in my past, but there was another time where I was working for this. It was a child care place, and I worked in the main office. And the lady, this particular day, it was the payroll manager. She was being real ugly towards me, and y'all, she was just she always was real busy. She was an older lady, but she was just always real busy. She'd come to you, say something real fast to you, and then she'd get gone. She just always just busy. And it's like, she had a lot, she had a lot to do and everything. And she did her job really well. But this particular day, it was the end of the pay period. And she had came to me and she was like, well, you didn't put something I didn't do on my timesheet right. Because I was still fairly new there at the place. So they did everything the old way. Like, they was still writing stuff on paper. And so anyway, because they hadn't updated their stuff in their computer or whatever. But anyway, it was sort of an older way of doing stuff. So on timekeeping stuff. So anyway, she came in there. So she was, she wasn't hollering at me, but she was just like, well, you didn't do this right. And you need to do this right. Because she was trying to leave. She had to leave early that day. So she was trying to make sure everybody, and I guess I was holding her up that particular day. But anyway, I corrected what she told me to correct and everything. And I was just real nice to her. But I did, sort of wonder. I was like, why is she being mean to me? I didn't even do nothing to her. So, but I didn't, I just went on about my business. So I can't remember if it was later that day or the next day. The HR lady came to me, and she came in my office, and she said, I just wanted to let you know, I saw what happened how she was talking to you. And I said, oh, you did? Because I didn't know she was even watching us. And she said, yeah, I saw it. And she said, you didn't even get mad or anything. She said, I don't know if I could have did that. And I said, well, I didn't think, I said, well, I was wondering what was wrong with her. But I said, it didn't really bother me, because I knew she was trying to leave early for one thing. I was just thinking about that. But anyway, she said, yeah, she said, I noticed how you handled that. You did not get back at her or anything. So, y'all, I thank God for using me in that situation. No glory to me, but glory to Jesus, because that he used me in that situation. Because if that had happened, some years before that, I would have let her know and I would have put her in her place. But I just that day, that time, I had no desire to do that. But the HR lady, she told me, said the payroll lady, she had death in her family. And so she was upset about that, one. And then two, she was trying to hurry up and leave, of course, so she could get home to her family and stuff. So I said, yeah. I said, well, I didn't know what was going on with her. I said, but I knew it had to have been something. But she wasn't really a super nice lady, but she was always real quick with everybody. But I didn't hold it against her, and I still don't hold it against her. Like I said, but I was so surprised because I was like, where was you at? I didn't ask her, but I was like, how was she watching me? But that's what I'm saying, y'all. Somebody's always watching us. And I went into that job talking about Jesus. I went into that job. I asked the Lord to bless me with that job so I could help somebody and encourage somebody. I prayed with people on that job. They prayed with me. It was just like that job was straight from heaven. And that's the first job I openly, that I had where I could openly talk about God, because everything else, all them other jobs I had before that one, I had to be hush hush about Jesus. But that job, I didn't have to be. Even the director, he talked about God. Me and him prayed together, because his wife had died at that time, and we always just talked about, you can go in any office, and we were just talking about the Lord. Every office, everybody was talking about Jesus. I loved it. I only worked there for 2 years, but I really enjoyed working there. But I always say that job came straight from heaven, because I prayed a prayer for that job. I said, Lord, next time I get the next job I get, this is my prayer. I said, the next job I get, I want it to have purpose. And that was purpose. That was all purpose, y'all. It wasn't about the money, because I didn't make much money on that job. Now, I'm going to be honest, because I had just got through working at Blue Cross. And when I got that job, I was making like $2 less. So it wasn't the money, but it was all about purpose. And that outranks money any day. But like I said, I still to this day, I don't know where that lady was at. But she said, I saw how you handled that. And I said, oh, I didn't even know I was handling the situation. I was just trying to be nice to her. And that's what I'm saying, y'all. I have had, people say mean stuff to me, curse me, whatever. But I still keep it moving. But this is my opinion, and it may not be yours. But when people are acting out of character, when people are doing stuff that you like, what's going on with them today? Don't exchange, don't get back at them. Don't if you're trying to be more, if you want to know, if you say you know Jesus and you want to be more like him, you shouldn't even want to get back at them. You shouldn't even want to, I'm gonna get her for doing that, or I'm gonna get him for doing that. That shouldn't even be in your mind. What should be in your mind? What can I do to help that person? Lord, show me what I can do. The next time around, maybe buy them lunch. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever God lay on your heart. But what I'm learning is that the Lord a lot of times wants us to pray with people. When they have a not so good day. I know, it ain't always easier said than done. I know that. Take it from me, I know that. Because it ain't really been people away from me. It's been family that have mistreated me. But I say I still keep it going. I still keep it moving forward. And I still pray for them, And I don't, like I said, I used to have a get back spirit, but I no longer have that. But my whole point of this live today is that Jesus is watching us all. Down here on earth, you got somebody watching you, and you, like I said, you thinking people are not paying you any attention. They looking at everything you doing. It's some people, I'll tell y'all this. So my late husband, when we would go to church back in Tennessee, And I would tell him, I said, did you see what, I'll be talking about somebody at church. And I said, did you see what they had on today? He said, I didn't even notice what they had on. And, because he didn't, he didn't look, I'm nosy. So he didn't look, he saw the person, but he said, I couldn't tell you what they had on today. And I said, really? They was talking to you though. You didn't see? He said, nope, I didn't care. I don't care what they had on. But see, me, I could tell you their whole outfit. I could tell you everything that they had on. And it wasn't that, it was just, I noticed the person. I was watching the person, I was watching who they was talking to. And I just noticed it. I'm still like that today. But he said, I saw him, I talked to him, but he said, I couldn't tell you anything about that. But somebody is paying attention to you more than you. And I wasn't stalking nobody. I wasn't whatever, but I knew, I everybody that I talked to, I could tell you, what they had on glasses, they had on, but then some people not like that, and that's how he was. He could care less about it. He talked to you, say what he needs to say, and he get out your face, but I wasn't like that. But anyway, somebody's watching you. Somebody's paying attention to what you're doing. Like I said, if you gossiping about people, you talking bad about people, you always got something mean to say about somebody, somebody's listening. Somebody's paying attention to everything you're doing. And you say you represent Christ. Christ would not behave in an ungodly manner. He will never, Jesus Christ would never do that. So we got to be mindful. We miss our opportunity, y'all, to help somebody. Nobody want to hear you what you got to say. If they just heard you cussing somebody out in the break room, if they heard you, but in a few breaths, you're talking about the Lord. They like, you probably want to, go and ask for forgiveness and repent before the Lord, but they don't want to hear nothing you have to say. And that could be the very person that that's the reason God got you on that job, or that's the reason God got you wherever he got you, in the family or whatever. He wants you to witness. He wanted you to witness to them, but yet you didn't display a Christ-like manner in front of them. You did not, share with them, or you didn't show them, what they needed to see. And like I said, it's easy for us to talk about how much we love God and how much we trust God and how much we obey God. It sounds good. It sounds good, y'all. But people are looking for you to walk your talk. They want you to walk that talk that you always talking about it, but you need to be living it. And we go to church. We in church every time the doors open. Some of us, we always talking about the Lord, but yet we treat people so ugly. We treat people so unkind. And one of the our pastor here, he mentioned one Sunday, and I said that's so true. He said, the people that you work with, the people in your family, do they know you? Are you the same person? Do you come in here on Sunday? But how do you act through the week, Monday through Saturday? How do you act? Sunday you got on this. Some of us got on a mask, but then Monday through Friday, we doing all this other stuff, and even Saturday too. But Sunday we got on our holy face. Sunday we got on our Jesus face. But what are we doing all them other days? And he said, are you acting, behaving differently all the other days? And I said, that's so true. That's so true, because like I said, y'all, people are watching us. They paying attention to us. Your neighbor, it's the people watching you. They watching you. And you think this is just how I am, but is it right? Is it right? And I had to do a self-inventory myself, because like I said, before my husband passed away, I wasn't living right. And I've shared this many times. I did not have a relationship with Jesus, but now I do. And I was, every time the doors of the church open, I'm running in the church. I look good on the outside, but I was tore up on the inside. I had a lot of unforgiveness in my heart, and I was not talking to people the way I should have been talking to people. I wasn't cussing nobody out, and I wasn't being mean to nobody, but I wasn't showing, I wasn't walking the talk. I was, what I was talking about. I was not walking that walk. And I did it on Sunday, and that was the only day I did it. Because all them other days, You know, I was not representing Christ the way he should have been represented. But now I am. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful to Jesus for changing me and allowing me to see, you know, what I was not doing and how I was misleading people. But even in the misleading, what I thought, there were people that I work with, you know, like on the job I just shared with the payroll manager lady, and then I had a young lady who reached out to me. You know, she said, can you help me pray? I don't even know how to pray. And here I am, I'm struggling. I'm married, I got children, I go to church, I'm doing all this. It looked good. I look good on the outside, but I was struggling myself. But God used me. He used me to help her. And I'll never forget that. She texts me. She texts me through social media. And I'm not bragging. I'm giving honor, glory, and praise to Jesus because he deserves it all. It's all about him. It's never about us. But I want to share this because I'm sharing this to let somebody know, to let y'all know that it ain't about us. You know, even in my mess, he used me to help her. And she started coming to church, and she was, you know, she went to church anyway, but she said, I just need somebody to help me. I don't know what to say to God. She said, I don't know what to say. And I didn't even really know what to tell her, to be honest. And I was just typing something, and I think I looked up the Lord's Prayer because at the time I didn't know the words to it. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't. And I Googled it, and I think I gave her the repentance prayer, sinner's prayer. I think that's what it's called. And yeah, but young lady, she was younger than me at the time. And so I just thank the Lord, you know, even in our mess, y'all, he'll use us to help somebody. So, you know, I'm thankful. I'm grateful for, you know, I've been through, I thank the Lord every day that I don't look like what I've been through. You know, I'm 51 and I love saying my age. I love saying my age, y'all, because I should have died. I should have died in my mother's womb. You know, my biological father told me, and I shared this with somebody today because, you know, a lot of times our parents don't tell us everything, you know, and I seemed like I would have been crying, but I wasn't. But it felt good for him to tell me this because I needed to know it. He said, "Yeah." Said we tried to get rid of you when you was in your mother's womb. And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, we didn't want you to be born because they didn't want no child together." And I said, "Wow." I said, "Wow, that's heavy. That's heavy." And so at that point, the devil been chasing me, y'all. He been after me. But see, God got his hand on my life and my children's life. So we protected. We protected always. But I've had car accidents. I've had this scar right here on my eye. Went through the windshield. Right, few weeks after I graduated from high school in 1991. I had a dislocated my right hip. I went through the seat was pushed up pretty far, you know. So I went through the windshield, and all of this was just open, you know. But they said I didn't need surgery. They thought I had lost my eye, but I didn't, and just walked away. You know, I had to stay in the hospital for a week, but that was it. You know, that was it pretty much. But yeah, God protected me. But it's been, you know, just different things happening. But when he told me that, I said, yeah. I said, wow. And he was crying, you know, and he said, "I'm sorry," you know. And I said, "No, you don't have to apologize." And he said, "But we couldn't understand why none of that stuff we mixed up worked." And I said, "Because it's called purpose." I said, "It's called purpose. I was meant to live. I was meant to live and not to die." And I said, even in your sin, even in what y'all was trying to do because of your selfish reasons, I said, God said, no, she gonna live. She gonna live. So that's why I like sharing how old I am. I'm 51. I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy, y'all. I am. But you know, that didn't come from my mom. It came from my biological father. And I know he's telling me the truth. I know he is. And he was crying, y'all. He was weeping. And I said, I was thinking to myself, I should be the one crying. But yeah, I told him, I said, thank you. I said, thank you for telling me the truth. I never knew that. Y'all, he told me this during COVID. I never knew that. I never knew it. And I said, Jesus, that explains everything. Yeah, he said they were mixing up everything. They went to a drugstore it said somebody had told them that was an easy way to do it. I said, Jesus. So y'all, it's sad. It's something else. I tell you, it's something else. But I'm here. I'm still here. I'm still strong, and that makes me want to go even more. And then the enemy thought he had me when my husband died. You know, he tried to take my life too. But God said no. She gonna live. Her and the children gonna live. And you know, we all was sick. I shared this in many other videos. We were so sick. I couldn't even walk. Couldn't even walk. But God, but God. So that's why I come on here. That's why I can't give up. I won't give up. I won't give up, y'all. And I know I'm gonna live a long time. God already told me that. But in my living a long life, I'm gonna do everything that I can do, that God give me the strength to do to help somebody else. Because I know what it looked like. I know what it looked like not to have a place to live. I know what it looked like to live in a hotel. I know what it looked like to have your car repoed. I know what it looked like, y'all. I don't look like what I've been through. But God, I'm still here. I'm still here. We in a place right now. I'm going to share that testimony later. Nothing but a miracle that we in this nice place. Nothing but a miracle. Nothing but a miracle. It came from God. So you can't tell me that God don't perform miracles. I'm one. I'm a miracle myself. I'm a miracle myself. So whatever the enemy is doing, plotting, planning, and scheming, it won't work. Because when Jesus got his hand on your life, everything else just might as well just get on back. Because you protected. He got his holy angels watching over me and you. So y'all be encouraged, you be blessed. And like I said, I don't come on this channel with lies. I don't come on here making up stuff. Everything that I share, I've been through. Everything. It's all real over here. I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to make up stuff. God has blessed me, and we're blessed to be a blessing. You know, we're not supposed to be keeping out what happened to us. You know, I used to when my dad told me that, I could tell in his voice that he was so ashamed. But I told him, I said, you know what? I love you. And I said, I love you for being honest with me. And I said, even though I was almost 50 then, I said, but you know, I thank you for being honest, because nobody ever took the time to tell me that. And y'all, it's so much stuff that's in our past that we need to find out, because that's how we're gonna move forward. And see, when he told me that, my late husband was still living at the time, because he the one told me. He said, you need to find out, you need to talk to him. Because, you know, I had never talked to him because he had never been in my life. But y'all, I think we was on that phone for 2 hours. And he told me some stuff. I was like, yeah, I signed up for that. But, you know, and like I said, it was just, some of it I knew, you know, but some of it, that I didn't know. I didn't know that. But I said, yeah, I'm a miracle. I'm a miracle. But he said, you here? I said, yeah. And I'm still here. But I pray for him, y'all. You know, I pray for my mom. I pray, you know, because I'm not mad at them or anything, because they was young, you know, they was young, and they, you know, not making excuses for them, but you know, it was what it was. You know, they just didn't want a child. They didn't want a child together because they didn't want to be together. But, you know, it's such a shame that the unborn child or the children or whatever the case is in the world, whatever, they have to, you know, they have to deal with, you know, their parents, whatever their parents' bad choices were. You know, choices got consequences. And, you know, so we just have to be mindful. And that's why I try my best to teach my children the right thing to do. And that's why I'm saying, you know, somebody's always watching us, and we ain't got no, don't nobody want to hear what you got to say. They don't want to hear nothing you got to say if you're not doing whatever you're telling them to do, you know, or if you're not trying to live a godly life. They're gonna run from you. They're gonna run from you. They don't want to hear nothing you have to say. And you, like I say, you lose your testimony. You know, nobody want to hear nothing from you. So just be mindful. That should be, if nothing else, encouragement for somebody. And it's for myself too, for us to do better. When we know better, we're supposed to do better. And like I said, you're not trying to impress nobody. You're trying to please, you want to please God. That's what you want to do. And when we go on these jobs, when we go in these uh, restaurants, wherever we at, we want to set an example. And I'm learning, if I go somewhere and if somebody want prayer, I pray with them right then and there. Not showy. I'm not trying to be showy. I want to please God, because God gives me discernment, and I can, he lets me know stuff. And so I don't, I'm going to pray for them right then and there, because it's urgent. It's urgent. They need that. And I need it too. I need it too. So just be mindful, y'all, of people around you. Be mindful of people in your family. Pray for them. If they near, far, wherever they at, just pray for them. Ask God to help them, and ask God to help you too, to be stronger in Him, because we all need Him. We need Him every day. We can't do nothing without Him. So thank you all for joining this live. I thank you all so much. Hello, Danny. Marry me is my, no, I don't, no, no. Okay, you in Africa. Thank you for joining the live. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Paul, is it Paul? I don't know about the ongoing, I don't know about the conflict. Sorry, I don't know about that. Thank you for joining the live, though. I'm glad you like this channel. Thank you. Thank you, y'all. But thank you again for joining, and I appreciate you all. I pray many, many blessings over everyone's lives. And I just always pray that if you don't know Jesus, that you will get to know Him before it's everlasting too late. Bye-bye. Thank you all. Jesus is the reason, and He's our Redeemer. He's everything that we could ever need Him to be. Bye-bye. Thank you all for joining the live. Have a beautiful, blessed Sunday. In the name of Jesus.